どんな戦闘でも生き残ってみせるわ。指揮官、期待して。
Hello and welcome. Today we are in the Tier 10 US cruiser, the Puerto Rico. We're playing a match on the map Sleeping Giant, and it's a Tier 8 to 10 match. I spawned on the western side and decided I'll take a risk and go into the ACAP immediately. Now, the reason I sailed diagonally is to use this island so that I would get some cover. Now that I'm gonna round the island, I obviously want to radar first to make sure that there's no sudden surprises that could ruin everything for me. There's a Monarch, but that's okay. Monarch probably can't punish me too much. It's even likely she probably is gonna just fire HE, which means that it matters even less. Cause sure, HE does damage, but whether I show broadside or not isn't that important. Besides, I will be able to deal damage in return because you could essentially think of the Puerto Rico as a battleship. See, Puerto Rico is, I guess the easiest way to think of it is like a higher tier Alaska. Basically the same. Tier by tier I would even say slightly worse, but you know, tier 10 is still tier 10. And thus she works kinda like a mini battleship. So we've made it into the cap, and there's actually a Z-46 here. But we're definitely gonna be able to take this cap unless a destroyer suddenly pops up, which seems incredibly unlikely. The Stalingrad is radaring. Also looking at the minimap briefly, we can see there's a Stalingrad, Kremlin, Bismarck, Prince Eugen and Monarch here, which means that this is not a cap we can hold. However, we might be able to deal damage, which is what I'm gonna do. By the way, the video is sped up for now. I'm gonna basically chill in this spot for a while. Maybe I'll get some very good AP salvos off. The Puerto Rico does have better AP angling. That is, the ship can be angled more than you would expect from, say, a battleship, and still penetrate without bouncing. And this makes the Puerto Rico quite nice for fighting other cruisers or battleships that show too much broadside. And this is basically what I'm waiting. Like, me just staying here pretty much warded off that Stalingrad, despite the fact that the Stalingrad has a lot of support and whatnot. But just the fact that I was here made the Stalingrad just not want to push, because it's dangerous. If she shows me a lot of broadside, I can punish her. But now I'm gonna start disengaging, because once the Kremlin gets too close, that's a ship I can't really fight well. And when they have multiple ships in position to fight us, obviously we are gonna lose, because we're a destroyer and one Puerto Rico, they have multiple battleships. On the bright side though, the middle of the map is mostly clear. There's maybe a Cleveland over there, so it shouldn't be too risky to actually go through the middle here and just disengage in that direction. Besides, because there are so many enemy ships on this side, it probably means we're winning on the other side. Oh wow, Stalingrad, you made a huge mistake here by showing broadside. Oh yes, 32k and 27k. So I basically just did 60k damage to that Stalingrad in a salvo. Yeah, that's what happens when you show too much broadside to Puerto Rico. It's basically like being shot at by a battleship. Unfortunately, Stalingrad's gonna be too angled by now, and my shells can't go over the island, so I'm gonna just get slightly further away and then maybe I can get my shells over the island. What I should have actually done here in retrospect is use my radar to be able to see where the enemies are, because right now, because of the smoke and island in the way, can't know entirely. But anyway, at this point, I'm gonna focus on the Cleveland instead, because the Cleveland is the one that's actually, you know, actively dealing damage to me. And the Cleveland is also showing broadside, which means that my AP can easily punish her. Cleveland doesn't even have to show too much broadside because of the better autobounce angles. Just showing a little bit's good enough, and that can already be punished because of the better angles. Basically, just the Puerto Rico is like Stalingrad in this sense, and yep, that's 16k damage. Unfortunately, we didn't quite sink her, but we got really close, and the next salvo is pretty much guaranteed to finish her off, unless she goes down now. Well, she did. And I think I am gonna be safe now. There's still a chance that if I take a large hit, I could go down, but I think I can disengage because of the Richelieu that's over there in the middle. If the Richelieu wasn't there, the Bismarck would probably still focus on me, and whether I would get away or not get away was would have kind of still been up in the air. But now I don't see a chance of me going down here, especially with my heal coming up again. And hey, meanwhile we can deal some more damage to this Bismarck. Now the Bismarck is aiming at me, so I'm going to angle away so that she cannot punish me too heavily with AP. I mean, while the armor scheme of the Puerto Rico is better than the Stalingrad's, and it's actually quite difficult to citadel her, it's still doable, and so I want to be safer rather than sorrier later. Otherwise, you know, it might just end up going poorly for me, because the longer I survive, the more damage I can do. Because once you're sinking, it's kind of difficult to deal any damage. Anyway, the Bismarck is showing a lot of broadside. Maybe I can actually get some penetration through the main belt at this point. Okay, maybe not. 4 non-penetrations, 1 penetration. Damn. I really thought that those shells would go through. Anyway, I'm gonna be behind the island now. I'm not sure if my shells can arc over this, so I do need to put some more distance between me and the Bisco. And I guess meanwhile I can take a shot on the Massachusetts since my guns are turned that way anyway. And I can't really turn my ship the other way. Aiming slightly higher because it seems like the Massachusetts was turning away, but I'm pretty sure she's coming in now, so unfortunately my shells went over the ship. But now I think I'm gonna take one more salvo here. Can't really tell where the ship is, so this is gonna just be by ear. And now we're back to fighting the ships that went to the A-cap. Hey, I got 1 shell hit. I guess that's better than nothing. The Bismarck went down, so I guess I'll just go through this gap here on the to my right here, because this is the fastest way to get back. And notice how they took so many ships into the A-cap, and it's basically a graveyard there. Like, that's just a whole bunch of dead ships. It's really hard to take that base and actually keep pushing through. Like, you can take the cap, right? That's not the big issue. The big issue is that once you do, you're kind of stuck in your tracks. It's not like the Kremlin, etc. can't seem to be able to push through that. And this is something what happens, like when people complain about lemming trains, that is exactly the issue that tends to pop up. Which is that people go onto one side, one direction of the map, and then they just get stuck there. They get bogged down by all kinds of things, usually destroyers, which I guess in this case happened as well, because you don't see the torpedoes, and the torpedoes can be super dangerous. And when you get bogged down like that as a team, it means that the enemy team can take multiple objectives in the same time, and thus, you know, you end up eventually losing the game. Doesn't always happen, of course, but that's what happens quite often. Now, the other reason why you do want to bunch up is because you have more fighting power in one spot. So if you try to punch through the enemy, you're more likely to actually be able to do that. So you kind of have to balance it out between those two issues, I suppose. I radar, because this will allow me to get one more salvo on the Prince Eugen, and then we're gonna turn back and try to go in. I guess the Monarch is gonna try to ram the Kremlin, so I might be able to support the Monarch a little bit, because the Kremlin is probably going to show me broadside, and my gun should be able to go through the armor belt, or the main belt of the Kremlin, and be able to citadel her, and thus, you know, delete her from existence, however much HP she still has left. And when you're close range, that tends to be quite easy. I wonder if the Monarch actually gets to ram the Kremlin, because... Oh, Kremlin actually shot elsewhere. Okay. Huh. Interesting. That's a really interesting choice by the Kremlin, but I guess whatever. I mean, at 12k HP, there was a chance the Kremlin might have just been able to sink the Monarch. Also, I'm gonna do what's called a pro gamer move now. See how good I am at the game? Look, I hit the ship 12 times, and I got non-penetrations all 12 times. Good job, Aerroon. Well done. You see, the problem most likely was that the angle the Kremlin was at was still too great. Not that they didn't bounce, they simply couldn't penetrate the ship, which indicates just how balanced Kremlin is, huh? Yeah, that was not my finest moment. I should have known better there. Anyway, Kremlin's finally gone, and now it's time to sink the Prince Eugen. She is doing some reversing maneuver. She has probably torpedoed me, or will torpedo me in a bit, which is fine. I still have 40k HP. The chance that I'll get hit by too many of those is kind of unlikely. And once my rear turrets have turned, I'm going to just turn my ship enough to be able to shoot all of the guns, because we might as well finish her off in one go. Or perhaps not. Perhaps we can overpen a few times and not sink the Prince Eugen. There are the torpedoes, however, I guess she didn't expect me to show this much broadside, so they were not on point. Regardless, she went down before the torpedoes arrived anyway. Still, that was quite embarrassing against the Kremlin. But on the other hand, I guess it also shows that I didn't bounce, so I didn't quite screw up as much as... Never mind, I messed up, okay? I messed up. I should have waited a little longer, and then I would have easily been able to get a Citadel on that Kremlin. Oh well, well played by the Kremlin. I still got number 1 in XP, so I guess that's good enough, huh? Alaska was number 2, by a whole 8 experience. That clearly shows that this game is pay to win, right? Because you had to pay for the Puerto Rico. So, 169k damage, essentially. I did sink the Kremlin, but what I was proud of was the shells on the Stalingrad. 65k damage. 60k damage in one go, just like that. You have to be careful, you know, who you show your broadside to. The Puerto Rico certainly is not one ship that you can show much broadside to, unless you're a Kremlin, in which case it seems like it's go ahead. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would like to thank the patrons on Patreon. Thank you very much for your continued support, and I hope I'll see you guys next time.